Okay, and we should be live. So I really don't know how prepared I am this morning. I want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are in the world. I see that we have in fact, I got to get, okay, back to my concurrent viewers. Looks like I have at least a couple people and want to go through and do a mic check and make sure that my audio levels are good. I do see audio out. I'm looking at output from my firewall here, and I see looks like stuff's going out. I'm seeing people. Yeah, this is in fact, this is even a cap that that a fellow up in Portland sent to me. Steve Cooper, I believe. Nice guy. Went through and it's got the kind of chrome metal bars making up IBM, and that's good to hear that I'm sounding good. I don't know how well prepared I am. I have a Mul 25. It looks even a little bit dirty, and this is one of the systems I went through and was trying to link in through iClass when I was running my server there. And because I've got the boards in there. In fact, I don't know if this is necessarily the best system, but I want to go through since it's natively a 720 kV diskette drive, and you can put in 1.44 megabyte diskette drives of the proper IBM type. I want to go through and see if I can work with it. Although that diskette drive in this instance is really buried kind of deep, and I'm hoping, in fact, it's a big button drive. In fact, I may have brought in the raw. We'll have to see. We'll have to look in there because normally the big button drives mean a 40 pin edge connector, and so we may be even out of luck. And I brought in this one different from another Type 1 Model 25 that I've had recently up on the bench, and I didn't have that one up because it's got that 40 pin edge connector. So I'll have to see. As I say, I don't know how prepared I am, and the light is really. You can hear my voice too. The light's really kind of playing trouble on my eyes this morning too, with the reflections off the screens and everything here. And I was having a hard time even seeing where my mouse was earlier and things like that, tracking it between all the different screens. But it looks like we're doing pretty good. I don't know what. Yeah, this thing is dirty. I need to go through. I've got the Clorox wipes and probably can go through. Do a little bit of, in fact, we'll go through, we'll get that pushed back a little bit. And we've got that masked out. Whoa, a bench. My seat's not doing real good here. So want to go through, in fact, of course, there's always a delay from from me going through on screen here. In fact, yeah, let's go through. Let's get kind of all the phase thing out of the equation. And I'm still moving around stuff on my bench as it is. I want to get, of course, I hid my internal webcam, but there's the display off to the left of this screen, of the camcorder screen. And it's hanging off my photo rig right now. And I need to go through one of these boom arms. And I need to actually go through and get it on the far end and get it out of view. And I can actually move the camcorder a little bit that way to get a little bit more centered here. And I've actually kind of moved things in, and I'm still really kind of adjusting things otherwise for having everything set up. And I'm still planning on, I've got my other studio that I'm still trying to get going, much bigger and a lot more convenient actually for me. So the premise was going through and talking about these and how they go through to adapt the PS2 style 34 pin connection that puts both data and power. And of course, a lot of drives that we're having just, in fact, I should have actually had a more of the drives out because it just, we go through and we have so much problem with them, even, and also the 40 pin edge connector drives for PS2 do the same thing. They put the power and data on that 40 pin cable connection. And for that, it's got the tech select adapter. And I can go through and I can probably, in fact, I should have had out my my tech select adapter as well. I can go through and easily link it. In fact, we'll go through. Yeah, I should have had all these and it's really easy to find. I'll put the okay. Just my stuff being slow here. Yeah, I'll actually get a little bit to the questions here in a moment as well. Here's the here's the tech select adapter. In fact, I should have gone through and yeah, I'm not very prepared at all. In fact, I wanted to look to see if there was okay, so here is the tech select adapter. Let's get myself back on that screen. Okay. Yeah, you can see the modder off to the left there, and I'm intending to move that actually over. And I actually have to get the background monitor. I've got to get moved over to the bench itself too. Okay, so the other angle we're going to look at, and I can do this actually in a bunch of ways, a few different ways. And so let's look at it this way. and I've had so much stuff come in anyway that I need to do a some unboxings. In fact, that's how I might fill a little bit of the time, because I'm not as set up as what I'd like to be. Okay, so here is the adapter that we are talking about. Or wanting to talk about today. Get to where. Okay. I need to get to where I can interact with it. Okay. So more than 10 available at this point. Mike went through and got some more evidently made. And it shows of course, some pictures of what we were looking at. Yeah, hover to zoom. I'm hovering. And we get to critique his soldering skills. It takes him some time to get these together, by what he said. I don't know if he plans to release them in kit form for people to do their own assembly or not. There's that jumper that's on them. And so that is, yeah. Mark, excuse me, I said Mike a moment ago. I need to say Mark. It shows you what frame of mind that I'm in this morning. Just trying to keep up here. But yeah, you've got more than 10 available. And as it says there too, it for the and of course we all got the link, the eBay link. I know that the browser capture of OBS doesn't show the link a lot of the time that you're on. And yeah, it's soldering is an interesting thing, and you got to have the right tools. I've been actually going through and looking for a desoldering station. I think at this point it'd be one good thing to have. But I wanted to go through, and of course, the other aspect that we deal with on these, and of course, there's the package. I've got addresses masked out. I went through and I actually got 2 of them, and Mark goes through and puts them in these pouches for the just for anti-static. And but I often go through, and I put my L40SX away, but this a lot of time was my go-to drive if I needed to do the 34 pin connection with the power and data. In other words, if I had a 34 pin connection for a diskette drive on a PS2 that I needed to work with just to get it configured, just to run a reference diskette, I would grab one of these. And this is not quite exactly the same drive, the Panasonic drive that's on the L40SX, but it is very similar. And these were for a time. In fact, they were like $9 on eBay just several months ago. And I went through and grabbed up like 3, and sadly they're not being offered. In fact, they're new old stock. They have the shutter on the front. Just a really nice way to go through and, as I say, it was my go-to drive. I just went through and connected that right up. I didn't have an adapter like that. This is the case with the 34 pins, and I didn't have the, like a 40 pin edge connector system. I'd get my tech select adapter out or something like that. And so that's the drive I usually came down to. And of course, we're used to, and I was actually thinking this is kind of sad in a way, because, well, I did go through and open it. I've got my box here. You can see I've marked as Gotek, and so that's the way I organize a lot of time. I have a box, just the appropriate size, and I put items in there. In fact, for the diskette drives, I've got a few pulled out here separate. I've got a box of them somewhere, but I had to go into my bin with the bay adapters with some of the diskette drives there to find a 3.5-inch diskette drive. And those drives are actually quite old. But the other angle is we go through, and of course we use the Gotek adapters. And that's why I say this is kind of sad for me in a way, because it shows me my state of mind, where I've got a brand new Gotek in the box. If I've opened it, at least I've cut the tape and looked at it, and but I haven't put it into service. And of course, the one big thing on PS2s comes down to, besides the mounting for these, we've got to come up with a good mounting solution. This is even the older style. I need to actually get up to date on my Goteks, because in fact, I wanted to go through, and I had an NCR system that's got a Gotek, and that has a conventional diskette drive connection on it. And the reason it has a Gotek adapter in there is because the diskette drive was bad. And that could have been one thing I pulled out here, but I didn't. And so, the thought, and I wanted to go through with the Mul 25, the aspect always was that and you said Mark said he soldered these to go through and nestle in to the Goteks. I guess that's probably the way that you meant. Connecting up, and then going through, of course, the power. In fact, I think he has pictures showing that. But yeah, the power on that, I didn't break anything, but that power, God, that's tight. Get that back in place. It's these it's all these locking nubs that they do for these things. I don't want to lock that on there. Well, I guess it can. And now it's all permanently tweaked like that at a little bit of an angle. But I mean, I guess I could go through and look at the pin 1. How's the silk screen on that? Okay. There's your jumpers and everything else that you do. But I could make sure of my my pin 1 marking and all that. But I do have machines that I've used the Gotex on PS2s, typically with the Tech Select adapter before now. And I wanted to see on the Mall 25 since it is natively 720 KB of that it would. Yeah, they designed those. I remember even some diskette drives having so loose of connections that the stuff just almost slips off. And then you have these instances where when it is locked in. And there's the retaining clip, of course, on the bottom for that. And sadly, this is not the only Gotek I have either. There's the Gotek sheet. Looks like they've even included some jumpers and things like that. And as I say, these are the old style. And I went through, I worked at the flash floppy stuff and all that, but I need to go through and do a little bit more with it. I realize, okay, I've got the internal webcam going at the same time. So you guys are seeing all the phase difference. I probably need to look at chat a little bit. I probably need to figure out why my mouse is not moving around very well. Okay, let's do that. That's better. I've got a black unit in here as well in the in my bin, and even have like the bay adapter. In fact, that's what the bigger things are, the bay adapter for the black model. And I've even put these on newer systems as well. The thought of getting as a way to get even though you don't need to have a Gotek on a modern system to get the images on the USB drive, I set up a system that way to where it was real easy for me to toggle through the I didn't have even the flash floppy update on it as a way to get images on there, because I thought of, just like my video last night of there's all the wrapper and everything else that probably came in internally. But just like my video of last night, I am trying to build up a little bit of a diskette library. And yeah, I've gone through for here in the studio. I've gone through and I've powered down my AS400, so I don't have I don't need it for the heat to be putting out the heat anymore. So I went through and powered it down just so I'm not running it. And so that's some of the angles for that angle. I do have as I say, I need to go through and test these, because these are, in fact, that one's even marked. I got a big B on that one, and that has the edge connector to the pin connect there on it. Good old teak drive, or is it TEC? And looks like somebody went through and had to modify that bay adapter a little bit. I don't think that was me. Notched it and folded the metal down just so they could get the edge connector in there well enough. And this one, in fact, I'm not even sure. This drive is probably not original to this bay adapter. In fact, that looks like it's all, I've got it opened or it's loose. I don't know if that's any, that's the one thing I need to go through and do too, is to test stuff and to make sure. And then here's another of a separate bay adapter type of going through to change even the Molex connector and then the data connector, and a really thin circuit board there to do. But I've got a box of these bay adapters too, and they can come in handy. I guess that's a TX drive as well. Or is it? Yeah, it is. Okay. Made in Thailand. Even real standard. Oh, and this has got even the nice full wraparound front for that. Okay, and that, I don't know if that even has a plastic bezel on the front of that drive or not. And then you've got, I need to go through and test all these. I've had them stored away for years and need to go through and find out what's operational. And that's something I could do with along with the PS2 drives. Now, I wanted to also, there were some questions even on the news group of in fact, yeah, let's, if you pull up that first. Okay. Yeah, this stuff's all dusty and everything else. And so when IBM first did the PS2, so I've had a recent video on the data migration facility that does the parallel port connection. In fact, I've got it, even a cable strung still, as a way to migrate the 5 1/4 inch format to the 3 1/2. You know, that was the one on one of the prior videos. And then I had I wanted to cover, there's the IBM went through on some of the PS2s, and they had this passive adapter, and that goes in a microchannel slot, just goes for power connections. And it's got a few driver chips on there just to kind of amplify the signal enough. And it goes through where you have this actually in the bay, in the B drive bay, and takes your 40 pin edge connector style. Then you have a ribbon cable, 34 pin ribbon cable, that comes down off of here. And I don't think that this is actually a necessarily a conversion to the 34 pin style here. I would have to really check that pin out. I wouldn't want anybody plugging that in and as an adapter otherwise. And then it went down to the passive adapter, and then it went out the back. And the funny thing is they labeled this as the FCC ID of the 4869002, which normally meant the 1.2 megabyte diskette drive. So this is bad because it filled up a bay, and then you also use an adapter slot, and not really that bad on like a Model 60 or Model 80, but I've seen these even on Model 70s. And you fill one of the adapter slots, and it just doesn't really work all that well. You're only able to run the 360 KB external diskette drive for that. And of course, the Model 30, I've shown this as well. I'll do the cleaner adapter here. Same thing here. This is the same equivalent. It went through to where you had your diskette drive connection and you flipped over your B drive cable. So at least it didn't take a bay, fill up the B bay with a adapter to get it to this. And this is very particular to the Model 30. And I've seen one of the Model 25s that had a similar adapter, like my unit that I put aside, not this one. But that goes through and does the same passive pass-through. And I guess it does have some amplifier buffer chips and things like that, but it puts it to the external connection for your 4869-001, the 360 KB. And there's the FCC ID for that. And so those are the passive adapters to go to a 360 KB external diskette drive. And I've got an old one of these as well, and I need to figure out where it is. It's a little bit different. This is the more common style. This is the Diskette Adapter A. And it has a diskette, floppy diskette controller. Again, dusty. And it goes through to where there is and on the other one, it's actually the connector is, I think it's a little bit more centered here. But you'll notice that it's got the external, all kinds of lint and hair and everything. So there's the external connection for either your 360 KB or 1.2 megabyte external diskette drive. And then the internal connector, 34 pins, this does not have power on it. This is effectively the same, this is just the data. This is effectively a clone or standard 34 pin diskette drive connection. And this was really, the internal connector was for use with the Model 60 and Model 80. And then later on, of course, the Model 65SX, the tower systems that had power plugs for the 5 1/4, and they had the 5 1/4 bays. So you put a diskette drive in that front bay on the Model 60 and Model 80, and you were able to have, do the same sort of thing that this was adapting, it's adapting to the conventional style diskette drive. And there's a little driver that was used for these, and it always set up if there's an internal drive that was connected, that was your next available drive letter, and then if you had an external drive, that was the after the internal. There's always the internal connector was the first drive that was assigned a drive letter ahead of the external connector. And that was all based on whether you had, of course, something connected. And these actually, for all that, and you remember the earlier IBM PC having a 37-pin connector for 2 external drives externally. And this is only a single drive, just like the 4869, just a single diskette drive. I even tried at one point to put in one of those dual drives, the 3.5-inch plus the 5.25, all in one chassis, and put it in a 4869 case, and it does not recognize the other attached drive. It does the twist in itself. It doesn't put that data line on that connector. And this is also a single drive. You can't branch that out to, and of course, these are not, I think Tim Clark had talked about one time where the modification of the driver to go through and set up the diskette drive as A or B internally, but these go through and it assigns, of course, the next available drive letter after the hard drive or whatever else. It goes through in, if you had like a MAL 60 and you had an A drive, you did not have a B drive, but you had a C hard drive, this would go through on the driver and that would be assigned D. And I think it used D. That's not normally mapped out for just necessarily a hard drive only. And then this was assigned the next available drive letter after the internal connection. So that's just a view of the diskette driver A. And I went through and played around with these adapters back in the day, and they're nice little handy little things to have, especially if you had a high density, a 1.2 megabyte IBM drive that you need to connect up to a microchannel PS2, and you could have it externally to the case, so you didn't need the bay to hold it, but you had to have this diskette adapter A on the system. You couldn't just use that passive adapter. So these are kind of handy to have. I want to go through. I've got the link for that actually too. I should have put that up. So yeah, the 2 chips on the bay adapter, they're just driver chips. They just go through and they buffer and amplify the signals for the. I guess I could get back on screen too. There's the diskette drive or diskette adapter A link, and it actually has the it explains the bay adapters and the passive adapter on that page as well. And good morning, Jesse. I guess if it's still morning in your location, and but yeah, they're just I go through and I get myself back on the internal webcam, but so yeah, there's just and it's clear for the sled. In fact, let's go through. Where did I have? Just saw the nice little screwdriver earlier. And yeah, and I I apologize in a way. I was intending to go through and to play with that adapter a little bit more, test it out on the Mall 25. We're going to go through and do this. We're going to pull the sled off the bottom because it's just set up just like a diskette drive with the latch and everything else that you slid it into the bay. And they had these clear sleds on the bottom here. And I even need to go through and map out what sleds go to what system. There's a so looks like Hitachi. Yeah, just a 74 LS02P. That's what both of them are. It's the Hitachi 74 LS02P. I don't know if the Ardent tool has we'll get the passive adapter here as well in a moment. So I'm scrolling down that diskette adapter A page, the last link that I provided. And in fact, let's do this. Copy, so capture. And I need to go through and get okay. So we're going to activate that. So there's the diskette adapter A. I'm going to go through, I'll get myself back on screen. And I'm always looking up because I have my OBS running on my big monitor. And so there it covers, and actually it's a little bit more reverse order. There's the older diskette adapter A. I've got pictures from me and everything on that. And then there's the later model. Then down at the bottom, there's the passive adapter and the bay adapter. And it doesn't actually diagram the bay adapter at all, just for those simple chips being on there. And it doesn't even diagram where the chips are on the passive adapter. Let's go through, hide that. And on the passive adapter, there is, and still kind of dusty. So there's a Motorola chip there, and I think that's like a data separator chip, that MC3487P. And then it's a Hitachi 74LS 126 AP. Got some resistors. What's that top chip? Another Hitachi 7438P. So just some logic chips, driver chips, making sure that those signals coming in from the bay adapter run over to the external connector. just power off the microchannel bus. And it's just a ground plane on the reverse side. So the same effective thing as the Mol 30, only the Mol 30 adapter has the EEPROM. There's not much code on this either. I've got all that documented. And then we see a lot of the same style chips there. So there's that Motorola 3487P. There's your Hitachi. Why aren't you focusing, camera? So there's a 74LS04. There's the 7438. There's a 74LS126. And this is for the 74LS 244 and that 74LS 688N. Those are that's the logic decode for the EEPROM, for the EEPROM address. And of course, that EEPROM is always, the ROM extension is always in a particular spot, hair. You can't adjust where that is. But these 688 address decode chips are kind of interesting because it's and these are actually, it's a common chip. I'd like to get more of them, but IBM used them in a lot of instances because you go through and you actually mimic the address decode on one side by grounding out the pins and of what address you're trying to match, basically. And so they decode that address. So this section of the 3 chips is for that ROM extension. And there's always the same ROM extension version on these. I've never encountered anything different. It's just a little bit of code. I actually even went through and so the of me going through and documenting that, and I apologize, Mark, because I'm going through and touching on other stuff rather than your adapter. I mean, I think that's grand. I'll love to go through there and test that. Here is the 8-bit adapter. And I can go through, in fact, and so, I've got that up in my own web space because Thomas, he is very interested in covering microchannel. Some of the really nondescript, especially 8-bit adapters, just there's I like hosting that stuff because it doesn't really index as well with the microchannel side. Okay. And I'll probably have to go through and, in fact, I've still got to where I can interact with this. So I've got the picture, just the same thing as what I've shown on the camcorder screen, and the reverse, that's what that R means. And then I'll have to go through and actually change the view just to get it to where it's not on screen. Let's get me on screen again. So there's the code that's effectively on that ROM extension, disassembled. And it's not even all that, not really all that much as it is. I mean, I say not all that much, but that's the code going through. And I could go through and I could, with the unassembly, I could go through and comment this listing to show a little bit more of what it's doing at some steps. But that is the almost to the end there. That is the listing, and we will get that to go away. And let's do, I guess I could get started opening up this. I'll go through and I'll put Mark's listing back up. Again, we'll interact with it to get it to scroll without getting into the picture too much. So it goes through and expands the picture size. I'll go through and yeah, John Saab, that gets it happens. He's probably already left, but for the power outage. But there's Mark's listing again for the eBay auction. Good old buy it now price to get these adapters that you need and keep him soldering. And so let me go through. I'm going to get off the webcam here, maybe get my bench cleared a little bit. And we're just shy of an hour. That's fine. I have to make sure I don't tilt my head so much that it tells me that my mic is muted or anything like that. I want to see what I can spot for these. Let's just move that off to the side a little bit. Move that for being the topic of the. I'll have to put that bay adapter back together at some point. And this is just dirty. I need to clean it up with the Clorox wipes. And I want to go through and decide which type 1 that I'm going to go through and to modify with the so I have the external display I can use as well. And this is looks to be one of the Model 25s that I got from the school auction here. And these black screws. This is a Type 2 Model 25. And the easy way to tell that is, why am I getting a lot of chimes from my Facebook? I hope it's not a somebody dropping a whole bunch of spam or something else. Oh, it's the admin group wanting to go through and somebody's wanting to do a lot of chatter, I guess. Should be above the drive connector. Okay. We'll get looking at that and then so and you do have your pin 1 marked. And of course, normally PCBs, they go through and pin 1 is squared a lot of the time. But so pin 1 of the cable is close to where the drive power is. And then if we look at the inverted side, pin 1 is on the same end, of course. You can see the silk screen. If I can get my camera to focus. So pin 1 is there. And as I say, sometimes for the PCB construction, they'll go through and to make it a little bit easier, they square off pin 1. But remember, for Mark's adapter here, it is the pin 1 is on the same end for both those 34 pin connectors as the power lead. So Gotek, just to go through and make sure that I'm correct, that pin 1 is towards the power on these as well. So yeah, I had it inverted. I had it to where this is the proper Gotek. And as I say, I thought there's a picture. And so it is actually supposed to be like that rather than the way I had it earlier. And so the diskette drives themselves, sometimes they will have a shroud, or they'll have a keyway, and even in some cases they notch the PCB if the keyway is on that side. Okay, so those pins, and that's pin 1 is towards the power connection again. So this would be on a this version of that 3.5-inch diskette drive. See, that doesn't have the lock in it for the power connection. And these, a lot of time, they slip on and slip off a lot easier. But that's effectively the way that would come. And then you have to look at how, for the drive in the bay. And as I say, we'll have to come up with the mounting of what these would be on PS2s, what sleds for different PS2s and things like that would be. But I'm glad you corrected me. And so I just want to look. And I will need my flashlight. Okay. So that is an Edge Connect diskette drive. And so that's the wrong, it's different from what I wanted to demonstrate. If I were to do that, I was going to go through and to basically to get that diskette drive out of the and like I say, it's buried so deeply in here. I was going to go through and try the Marks adapter with a Gotek or a diskette drive to go through and to see if the Model 25, the 8086 version, would recognize a 1.44 megabyte connected drive this way. Now I'll have to get a different system. I've got other Model 25s that have the small button eject that are the pin connect drives. And I've gone through and I've modified this one. In fact, I cut away on the riser support a little bit. There's the network board to boot. That's called the LAN adapter A for Ethernet from IBM to boot to the iClass system. And then I had external, I had a VGA display in there to get video out of that. You notice that's a 16-bit adapter, ISA adapter, but works in an 8-bit slot, just like the network adapter. 16-bit, but works in an 8-bit slot. And so on the Model 25, this is the diskette side, and then the hard drive is on the side. This model does not have a hard drive, and it's that's what I could have done as well. I could have disconnected it here and run a connection from, this is a 40-pin connection, and gone through to the adapter externally is what I could have done. Would have been one way to do it, or if I'd have been a little bit more prepared. And I hesitated for so long live stream wise as I got close to the weekend. And I'm glad that this topic, but so there, the Tech Select adapter does pretty good for the 40-pin to 34-pin. And I've got my Tech Select adapter somewhere. Somewhere around here. I'll have to find where it is. And yeah, that's what I do is I would go through and I'd make sure that pin 1, especially if you don't have if you've got the shroud that's keyed on the one side. It's keyed on that shroud for the cable coming in, at least, so there's not any real mistake. And it's really important to note too, like the PS2s, there's the model 35s and 40SX. There's the model 56 and model 57 that they even have 40 and 44-pin planar connections. And then they take the cable and do things with it. But yeah, for this side of the for connecting up to the Gotek or the diskette drive adapter, I mean, excuse me, the diskette drive, you've got pin 1 marked there, which is pretty good. And so that's probably, that's probably fine for the pin 1 marking, but just to use the convention, or I don't think you need anything like a silkscreen arrow or anything like that, red dot or anything like that to because on the cables, of course, they go through and they stripe pin 1. They go through for, in fact, I think even these have it. The two different colors is nice to see. The pin 1 being with the red stripe and the blue stripe on that one denoting pin 1. Um, but I think you'll do fine. This has got the red stripe on it. Really, for the 40 pin, in fact, the tech select adapter, it needs a more of a, the thought even a little bit of a lead between the edge connect and the pin connect. I'm not a real big fan too on these, for these planar connections of the to the diskette drive. The models are so varied a lot of the time, and you got to think this, it's notched out for the case down below, so you've got to, and the same way on the hard drive on this side, you've got, if you have an adapter that's sitting in there, like these, this video adapter was in here, and I'm just using this as an example, that is obscuring. You couldn't have a component that sits up from that wouldn't interfere with the adapter. So it's more where just a little bit of the thought process and mapping out where the connections are on different systems of the PS2s. And the nice thing here for the PS2 adapter, you got to think for all that, it's a it's not a moving target. It's there's defined PS2 models, and there's nobody making any more PS2s now and making them different styles to go through and to have to modify things. So it's an easy, just to go through and kind of draw out how those the different points of connections. And like I say, the other Mul 25 I have, it's interesting because it does have a diskette. It, it's got this in the adapter slot, and I don't know if they go through for the upper or lower. I think that one has the AST board in the upper slot, but I'll have to see. Yeah, even there, you got to. It's going through and it's interfering a lot with me getting the adapter in there. But that's got a different cable, and I need to map out actually all these FRUs of the cables, the cable part numbers, to for what's used in what occasions. If you have a 4869-001 adapter in your Mul 25, what cable do you need to also connect in the B drive as well as the A drive? Something like that. And I think for the edge connector drive, I saw where it does a pass through. It'd be interesting to pull this drive out here in a moment. Um, but just all those different sorts of um, how the positions of all these cables where they're at. Now, that, as I say, this is a type 2. Here is the power, here is the video. And I'm actually going to modify a type 2 for external video. There's a little module that I have. And it actually goes through and sits on the video connection as well as the power. It taps into the power. And the type 1 and type 2, they moved that power connection. Type 1, it was closer to the edge. And on type 2, they moved it inboard. And so you have to account for that. I saw, of course, on the video that someone did, I saw that they're having a real hard time detaching the power connection, just the same as I had with the diskette drive power just a moment ago when I connected the adapter to that power. And these actually have retaining clips on them to get that power loose. But I've got to decide which of these type 2s I'm going to actually modify for having that external display. But this one sure is dusty, and I need to go through and clean it. I think I've got some better units that I can go through and use for all that. But that's a good thing. And just the other angle that we really need to map out the Ardent tool anyway is how these cables are, the structure of them, the one-to-one alignment in some instances. In some cases, they branch out particular conductors of these ribbon cables and move them around. What has power, what has data, and that information is up on the Ardent tool a lot of time if we've gone through, and I need to go through and make sure that a lot more of it gets. I feed some information over to Tom, and that he can put the information up. But I'm going to go through. It's been a nice stream, a little bit over an hour. I want to go through as a way to wrap things up, kind of. Is there was initially a question on there? Okay, and I don't know if that person is still on in chat. It says, since you have your faithful subs on, what is the number one thing that you're looking for the museum? And so really I'm going to go through and I'll do a kind of a wish list page that goes through to explain some of the items I'm looking for at the time. And I think I need to get some, and of course, that's going to be very dynamic content that I go through as I'm looking for items or whatever else. I don't know for the museum side, that aspect. Yeah, there's stuff I'm looking for once we can get something, a public, museum side, to kind of, to put a lot of the items I've collected over the years on display, working PS2 systems, by model where people can go through and see those in operation. So I don't really know off the top of my head right now of what the number one item that I'm looking for at the moment. There's so many different little pieces that I'm hoping to find out there to work with. So yeah, the exactly. That's what I want to do a little bit more, is to document the FRU part numbers of the cables in different systems. And we have like an example. In fact, we can make sure that they do match up. Go through. I know I'm always going through. I almost need like a foot switch to go through and to conceal my. But this is the MUL 30, and this is the standard cable. Even if you didn't have a B drive, you had the planar connection, the A drive, and the B drive if it were in the bay, and then it flipped around and it was the right orientation and everything else, the right cable folds to fit in that diskette, the 4869 adapter could connect up to that side. So there you have that FRU part number, the 68X2827. But what is talked about is the distance between, taking a ruler and mapping out how long these cables are between what connector styles they are. If you have a twist in the cable where there are particular folds to fit in the unit, that would be great. Going through and marking pin 1 and marking any keyways that you have in the connector of how they fit. Just so people don't wire up things backwards, things like that. That's what we're talking about for documenting those cables. Even in an instance where the cable's down, way down there. And I even wonder, in fact, I got to investigate, because I think that end, they still have a B drive end, and I'm wondering if it comes back up in the case where you had the 4869 adapter that was in here. And as I said, this model of the doesn't have the hard drive, and this is typical for an I-class system that was in a school. They didn't even need a local hard drive. They went through, and on the MUL 25, when it was released, a lot of time they were I think they were in short supply of the proprietary hard drives run from the planar connection. And so a lot of time they had an MFM adapter in them, and had just a 3.5-inch MFM drive in that, below the planar in the bay there. And so they did all the cable. There's a really odd cable routing and everything else they did to reach the drive down here. And they had to come up, of course, with a power tap for that as well, for that MFM drive a lot of time. And they did it from the little paddleboard. So there's just a lot of details there that still need to be mapped out model by model on these. And once I get my photo rig set up a little bit better, I'm going through and trying to arrange the lighting a little bit better, and I'll get systems to where they're off of it as well, to get that monitor moved off to the side as well. Then I'll take more photos. I know that we've been working on at the Ardent tool, where we've worked on and got up a lot of the planar photos too, that will show helping with the diagrams of where those diskette drive connections are as well. But there's no replacement for even having the physical model and being able to say, what interferes in this connection. If I put adapter here and it inserts on the planar, what is it going to interfere with, or whatever else? And I'm happy to help out in a lot in cases. Now, I know that the question came up on the Facebook group as well for the cisgen bridge adapters, and I need to get those out and document those a little bit better. Most recently, it was the Model 60 and Model 80 cisgen bridge adapter that was shown. Cisgen did those bridge adapters, and rather than having a passive adapter in the system that went into an adapter slot, they had their bridge adapters were separate PCBs that could be, and they often had just a cable going to the 37 pin connector. So you didn't have something that filled up an adapter slot, but you had to place that circuit board, that cisgen circuit board, somewhere in the system. And those cisgen bridge adapters, they did the same thing. They adapted the diskette drive connection to something externally or their own tape drive. And so those need to get documented a little bit more at the Arden tool as well. So let me get myself back on. I think we've had a pretty good live stream session. I do this every Saturday at the time, starting at the time, and it's just flexible to when it ends. We had a live stream back even a weekend or two ago that was a 3-hour live stream. Once I even got through and trimmed off that half-hour lead in off the front of it, just with the animation and everything else working. So I am glad that people tuned in. I look forward to seeing you next week as well. Very good chat responses and everything else. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to wrap up the stream. Hope to get a little bit further, and maybe there's an opportunity to get a better Model 25 and to get. I thought about having a Model 90 as well, and I'll have to decide what I'm going to do for the live stream next week. I'd like to get back into. I want to actually show an EduQuest system, bring it up, have a working EduQuest system, and try and boot it off the ROM DOS. The DOS that's in the ROM chip of that EduQuest model. But there be other opportunities for other topics, and I need to get back. There's other topics that I've let languish a little bit that I need to readdress, and in particular the video series I'm talking about of going through and benchmarking like the Model 56, Model 57 planers against each other, those CPUs and planers. But that's probably not going to be a live stream. So, as I say, that this is IBM Museum. That's all I have for now. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I really enjoyed the live stream and going through and looking over some of the stuff, and should have been a little bit better prepared. Thank you.